The kitchen clock read 1:17 a.m. when Vanessa stumbled through our front door, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer. I sat at the granite counter, laptop open, pretending to work on a client's network security while actually documenting every lie she'd told me over the past 3 months. "You're still up," she said, not even bothering to look at me as she dropped her designer purse on the marble surface. The sound echoed through our supposedly perfect home. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. 20 years as an IT consultant had taught me patience, and 15 years of marriage to Vanessa had taught me when to keep my mouth shut. She moved to the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water, and took a long drink. That's when she turned to me with that smirk, the one that used to make my heart race but now made my stomach churn. "My boss is a real man who takes care of all my needs," she said, her words slightly slurred from whatever expensive wine she'd been drinking. "Unlike some people I know." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I stared at her, this woman I'd built a life with, who now stood in our kitchen at past midnight, openly mocking me about her affair. "Is that right?" I asked, my fingers still typing on the keyboard, documenting this moment like everything else. "Caleb knows how to treat a woman properly. He doesn't spend his nights hunched over a computer fixing other people's problems." She laughed, a sound that had once been music to my ears. "He takes charge, makes decisions, acts like a man should." I nodded slowly, saving the document I'd been working on. 3 months of evidence. Phone records showing calls to the same number during her late meetings. Credit card statements revealing dinners for two at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges on days when she claimed to be visiting her sister. "Jack, are you even listening to me?" Vanessa's voice cut through my thoughts. "Every word," I said, closing the laptop. "Every single word." She rolled her eyes and headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed. Don't wake me up when you finally decide to come upstairs." As her footsteps faded, I opened my laptop again and typed, 1:17 a.m. V returns home, openly admits affair with boss Caleb Sutter. Claims he's a real man, appears intoxicated, no remorse, only contempt. I'd been Jack Fenwick, devoted husband for 15 years. Patient Jack, understanding Jack. Jack who fixed everyone's problems but couldn't fix his own marriage. That version of me ended at 1:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night in October. I spent the next 3 hours in my workshop, a converted garage space where I kept my tools and electronics. Most people saw me as just another IT guy, but I'd learned a few things about security systems, data recovery, and human nature over the years. By 4:30 a.m., I'd changed every password on our shared accounts, moved our savings to an account only I could access, and created encrypted backups of every piece of evidence I'd collected. I also sent a carefully worded email to my lawyer requesting a consultation about asset protection in a volatile market. The sun was rising when I finally went back inside. Vanessa was snoring softly in our bed, still wearing her work clothes from the previous day. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand, and I noticed 17 missed calls from someone named C. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the morning light filter through the windows of the house we'd bought together 7 years ago. The house where we'd planned to raise children, grow old together, build something lasting. That house now felt like a crime scene, and I was both the victim and the detective. At 7:15 a.m., Vanessa appeared in the kitchen, looking remarkably put together for someone who'd been stumbling around drunk a few hours earlier. She wore her navy blue power suit, the one she claimed made her feel invincible. "Coffee smells good," she said, pouring herself a cup like nothing had happened. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Like a baby." She checked her phone, frowning at the missed calls. "I have an early meeting today. Might be late again tonight." "With Caleb?" The question stopped her mid-sip. She looked at me over the rim of her coffee mug, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. A surprise, maybe, or fear. "With the marketing team," she said carefully. "We're launching a new campaign." "On a Wednesday night?" "It's a big account, Jack. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." I nodded and took another sip of my coffee. "You're right. I wouldn't understand the pressure of lying to someone who loves you." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She set down her mug with more force than necessary. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all." I smiled at her, the same smile I'd given her on our wedding day. "Have a great day at work, honey." The confusion on her face was almost worth the sleepless night. She grabbed her purse and headed for the garage, calling over her shoulder, "Don't wait up." The garage door closed, and I was alone with my thoughts and my plans. I called in sick to work, The first time I'd used a personal day for something other than Vanessa's needs in 3 years. Then I drove to the other side of town, to O'Malley's pub, where my brother Pete usually grabbed lunch between his shifts at the police department. Pete was already there when I arrived, sitting in his usual booth near the back, working on a sandwich that looked like it could feed a small family. "You look terrible," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "Thanks, that's exactly what I needed to hear." "What's going on, Jack? You sounded weird on the phone." Pete was 5 years older than me, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of straightforward personality that made him a good cop and an even better brother. He'd never liked Vanessa, though he'd been polite enough to keep his opinions to himself. "Vanessa's having an affair," I said. Pete stopped chewing. "You sure?" "She told me herself, last night, or this morning, technically." "She told you?" "Bragged about it, actually. Said her boss is a real man who takes care of her needs." Pete set down his sandwich and leaned back in the booth. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to destroy her." The words came out calmly, matter-of-factly, like I was discussing the weather or a client's network upgrade. Pete studied my face for a long moment. "Jack, I know you're hurt." "I'm not hurt, Pete. I'm done. There's a difference." "What do you need from me?" That was Pete. No lectures about forgiveness or working things out. Just a simple question about what kind of help I needed. Information. About asset protection during divorce proceedings. About what's legal and what isn't when it comes to gathering evidence of adultery. And what's not legal. I'm not planning anything illegal, but I am planning to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly who Vanessa Fenwick really is. Pete nodded slowly. "Her boss, you said? What's his name?" "Caleb Sutter. He runs the marketing firm where she works." "Married?" "Very. Wife named Linda. 2 kids in private school. Big house on Elm Street. You've done your homework. I've had 3 months to do my homework." We talked for another hour. Pete gave me the names of 2 divorce attorneys and a private investigator who specialized in adultery cases. He also reminded me about the legal boundaries I needed to stay within. "Document everything," he said as we prepared to leave. "But don't do anything that could come back to bite you in court." "I won't." "And Jack, don't let this turn you into someone you're not." I shook his hand and headed home, stopping at 3 different locations to make copies of my evidence files. I stored them in safe deposit boxes at different banks, along with written summaries of every conversation, every suspicious phone call, every lie Vanessa had told me. By evening, I had a plan. Vanessa came home at 11:30 p.m., earlier than the night before, but still reeking of wine and another man's cologne. "How was your day?" she asked, actually seeming interested in the answer. "Productive," I said. "Very productive." She smiled and headed upstairs. "I'm exhausted. Don't stay up too late." I waited until I heard the shower running, then opened my laptop and began typing the first of several emails I'd be sending over the next few days. The first went to Vanessa's parents, Harold and Margaret Whitman, who lived in the expensive part of town and had always treated me like I wasn't quite good enough for their daughter. "Dear Harold and Margaret," I wrote, "I thought you should know that Vanessa has been having an affair with her boss for the past several months. She's been using the credit cards you co-signed to pay for hotel rooms and dinners with him. I have documentation if you'd like to see it. Regards, Jack." The second email went to Vanessa's best friend Erica, who worked in HR at the same marketing firm and had always been a little too interested in other people's business. "Hi, Erica," I typed. "I wanted to thank you for covering for Vanessa during her affair with Caleb. I'm sure it was awkward, being asked to lie to me about where she was spending her evenings. I hope it was worth it. Best wishes, Jack." The third email was the most important. It went to Linda Sutter, Caleb's wife, whose email address I'd found through the PTA website for her children's school. "Mrs. Sutter," I wrote, "you don't know me, but I think we have something in common. My name is Jack Fenwick, and my wife works for your husband. I believe they've been having an affair for approximately 3 months. I have phone records and other evidence if you're interested. I thought you deserved to know. Sincerely, Jack Fenwick." I scheduled all 3 emails to send at 8 a.m. the next morning, then closed the laptop and went to bed. Vanessa was already asleep, lying on her side with her back to my half of the bed. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shared my life for 15 years, who had promised to love and honor me through better and worse. Tomorrow, she was going to discover what worse looked like. My phone started ringing at 8:47 a.m. I was in my workshop, pretending to organize my tools while actually waiting for the explosion I knew was coming. "Jack!" Vanessa's voice carried from the kitchen, shrill and panicked. "Jack, get in here now!" I took my time walking back to the house, stopping to check the mailbox and water a plant that didn't need watering. When I finally entered the kitchen, Vanessa was pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. "No, Mother, I can explain everything," she was saying. "It's not what it looks like." She saw me and ended the call abruptly. "What did you do?" "Good morning to you too," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Sleep well?" "Don't play games with me, Jack. My parents just called. They got some crazy email about me having an affair." "That's terrible. Who would send something like that?" Her eyes narrowed. "You know exactly who sent it." "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." Before she could respond, her phone rang again. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. "It's Erica," she whispered. "You should probably answer that." She did, and I could hear Erica's voice from across the kitchen, high-pitched and excited. Vanessa walked into the living room, but I could still make out most of the conversation. "Everyone's talking about it," Erica was saying. "Linda Sutter called the office looking for Caleb. She was crying, Vanessa, crying and screaming about divorce lawyers." Vanessa's responses were too quiet for me to hear, but I could imagine the panic in her voice. I finished my coffee and headed back to my workshop, where I spent the morning working on a legitimate client project while monitoring the situation through the security cameras I'd installed around our property. Vanessa made 17 phone calls in the first 2 hours, pacing around the house like a caged animal. At 11:30 a.m., a black BMW pulled into our driveway. Through the camera feed, I watched a tall man in an expensive suit get out and storm toward our front door. Caleb Sutter, I presumed. I made my way to the kitchen window, where I had a clear view of the front porch. Caleb was pounding on the door like he was trying to break it down. Vanessa answered, and they immediately launched into a heated argument. I couldn't hear the words, but their body language told the story. Lots of pointing, lots of gesturing, lots of blame being thrown around. After about 10 minutes, Caleb got back in his BMW and roared out of the driveway, leaving rubber marks on the asphalt. Vanessa came inside and found me in the kitchen, reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." She sat down across from me, and for the first time in months, she looked genuinely vulnerable. "Jack, I made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "I got involved with someone at work. It didn't mean anything. It was just I was feeling neglected, and he paid attention to me." I folded the newspaper and looked at her. "Neglected?" "You're always working, always focused on your computers and your clients. When was the last time we went out to dinner? When was the last time you planned a surprise for me? When was the last time you came home before midnight?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You've been lying to me for months, Vanessa, spending money we don't have on dinners and hotel rooms with another man, and now you want to blame me for neglecting you?" I'm trying to apologize. "No, you're trying to manage the situation. There's a difference." Her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face crumpled. "What is it?" I asked. "Caleb's wife filed for divorce this morning. She's asking for everything." "That's unfortunate." "Jack, you don't understand. If this gets out at work, we'll both lose our jobs. The company has a strict policy about relationships between supervisors and subordinates." "You should have thought of that before you decided to have an affair with your boss." She stared at me for a long moment. "You're different." "How so?" "You're colder, harder. This isn't like you." I stood up and rinsed my coffee mug in the sink. "Maybe you never really knew me." The rest of the day passed quietly. Vanessa made more phone calls, trying to do damage control with her parents, her friends, and her coworkers. I worked in my shop, monitoring the situation and planning my next move. That evening, I drove to O'Malley's pub to meet Pete for dinner. The place was packed with the usual crowd of cops, firefighters, and blue-collar workers. Sam O'Malley, the owner, waved me over to the bar. "Heard you've been having some domestic troubles," he said, wiping down a glass. News traveled fast in a small town. "Where did you hear that?" "Linda Sutter was in here earlier, crying into a whiskey and telling anyone who'd listen about her cheating husband. She mentioned your name." "What did she say?" "That you were a stand-up guy for letting her know what was going on. Said her husband was messing around with some marketing woman named Vanessa." I nodded. "It's been a difficult day." "I bet. But you did the right thing, Jack. Nobody deserves to be made a fool of." Pete arrived a few minutes later, and we grabbed a table in the back corner where we could talk privately. "How'd it go today?" he asked. "Better than expected. Caleb's wife filed for divorce, Vanessa's parents are furious, and her best friend is probably spreading the story all over town." "And Vanessa?" "Trying to blame me for her mistakes. Claims I neglected her." Pete shook his head. "They always find a way to make it someone else's fault. She's scared, Pete. Really scared. She knows this could ruin her career." "Good. Actions have consequences." We ordered dinner and talked about my next steps. Pete had spoken to his friend in family law, who confirmed that I'd done everything by the book so far. Just keep documenting everything, Pete advised, and don't let her manipulate you into feeling guilty. I won't. You sure? Because the Jack I know has always been a little too forgiving when it comes to Vanessa. He was right. I'd spent 15 years making excuses for her behavior, covering for her mistakes, and putting her needs ahead of my own. But that version of Jack was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. When I got home, Vanessa was waiting for me in the living room. She'd changed into the dress she wore on our first date, and she'd made dinner, something she hadn't done in over a year. I thought we could talk, she said. Really talk, without all the anger and accusations. I sat down across from her, curious to see what approach she'd try next. Jack, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. But we can get through this. We can rebuild our marriage and make it stronger than before. Can we? Yes, but I need you to help me. I need you to call Linda Sutter and tell her you made a mistake, that you misunderstood what you saw. There it was, the real reason for the dress and the dinner and the vulnerable act. You want me to lie for you. I want you to save our marriage. By lying. By protecting what we've built together. I looked around the living room at the photos of our wedding day, the vacation pictures, the artwork we'd chosen together, 15 years of shared history. What about Caleb? I asked. It's over, completely over. I'll never see him outside of work again. And work? We'll be professional, nothing more. I nodded slowly, as if I were considering her proposal. What about the money you spent on hotel rooms? I'll pay it back, every penny. And the lies? No more lies. Complete honesty from now on. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft and warm, familiar after all these years. Please, Jack, I'm begging you. Don't let one mistake destroy everything we have. I squeezed her hand gently. Okay. The relief on her face was immediate and overwhelming. Really? Really. I'll call Linda Sutter tomorrow and tell her I was mistaken. She came around the table and hugged me, and for a moment it felt like the old days, before the lies and the betrayal and the midnight confrontations. Thank you, she whispered. I love you so much. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. That was the strangest part. Even after everything she'd done, I still loved the woman she used to be, the woman I'd married 15 years ago, but I didn't love the woman she'd become. After Vanessa went to bed, I sat in my workshop and opened my laptop. I had no intention of calling Linda Sutter or retracting anything I'd said, but I wanted Vanessa to think she'd won, at least for a few days. I spent the next hour researching Caleb Sutter's background, his company, his finances, his reputation in the business community. I also looked into Vanessa's employment contract and the company's policies regarding workplace relationships. What I found was interesting. Very interesting. Caleb's marketing firm was struggling financially. They'd lost 3 major clients in the past 6 months, and there were rumors about layoffs. Vanessa's position was far from secure, especially now that her relationship with the boss had become public knowledge. I also discovered that the company's parent corporation had a zero-tolerance policy for supervisor-subordinate relationships. If the corporate office learned about Vanessa and Caleb's affair, they'd both be terminated immediately. I made a note to follow up on that information. At midnight, I checked the security cameras one more time before heading to bed. Vanessa was sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about the second chance she thought I'd given her. Tomorrow, she was going to learn that some chances only come once. I woke up at 5 a.m., 2 hours before my alarm, with the clarity that comes from a good night's sleep and a clear conscience. Vanessa was still unconscious beside me, one arm thrown over her face to block out the early morning light filtering through our bedroom curtains. I made coffee and settled into my workshop with my laptop. The first order of business was research, specifically finding the corporate headquarters contact information for Caleb's parent company, Morrison & Associates. Morrison & Associates was a multinational firm with offices in 12 countries and a reputation for aggressive business practices. Their employee handbook, which I found buried in the depths of their website, was very specific about workplace relationships. Any romantic or intimate relationship between a supervisor and subordinate must be reported to Human Resources within 48 hours of its commencement. Failure to report such relationships may result in immediate termination. Perfect. I drafted an anonymous email to their corporate compliance department, detailing the affair between Caleb Sutter and his subordinate, Vanessa Fenwick. I included dates, locations, and enough specific information to make it clear this wasn't just gossip or speculation. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I saved it as a draft and moved on to my next project, Caleb's financial situation. Public records showed that he'd leveraged himself heavily to maintain his lifestyle. The house on Elm Street had a massive mortgage. His BMW was leased, and he'd taken out a home equity loan just 6 months ago. If he lost his job, he'd lose everything within 90 days. Vanessa appeared in the kitchen at 7:30, looking nervous but determined. She dressed carefully in a conservative outfit that screamed, reformed adulteress seeking forgiveness. "Did you call Linda Sutter yet?" she asked. "It's 7:30 in the morning, Vanessa. I thought I'd wait until a more reasonable hour." "Right, of course." She poured coffee with shaking hands. "What are you going to say to her?" "That I made a mistake, that I misinterpreted some innocent interactions between coworkers." The relief in her voice was pathetic. "Thank you, Jack. You don't know what this means to me." "I think I do." She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. At 9 a.m., I called Linda Sutter. She answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Sutter, this is Jack Fenwick. We spoke yesterday about our respective spouses." "Mr. Fenwick, I wasn't expecting to hear from you again. I wanted to follow up on our conversation. Have you had a chance to confront your husband about the affair?" "I have. He denied everything, of course. Called you a jealous husband trying to cause trouble." "What do you think?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think my husband has been lying to me for months. I think your wife has been helping him do it, and I think they both deserve whatever's coming to them. I'm glad we understand each other. What did you have in mind?" We talked for 20 minutes. Linda Sutter was angrier than I'd expected, and smarter. She'd already hired a private investigator and was documenting Caleb's movements. She'd also frozen their joint accounts and changed the locks on their house. "I want him to lose everything," she said. "His job, his reputation, his friends, everything. That might be possible." "How?" I told her about Morrison & Associates' policy on workplace relationships. She was very interested. "If I report them to corporate, they'll both be fired?" "Most likely." "When?" "That's up to you, but I'd suggest waiting until you have all your financial affairs in order. Once Caleb loses his job, you won't be able to get much in the divorce settlement." She laughed, a bitter sound. "You're more devious than you look, Mr. Fenwick." "I'm learning." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the morning working on legitimate client projects. I had a reputation to maintain, and my business was the foundation of my financial independence. At lunch, I drove to the other side of town to meet with Thomas Carter, a retired private investigator Pete had recommended. Carter was in his 70s, sharp as a blade, and had spent 40 years uncovering other people's secrets. "Your brother tells me you're having marital problems," he said, as we sat in his cluttered office above a used bookstore. "My wife is having an affair with her boss. I need to know everything about their relationship. When it started, where they meet, how often they see each other." "You planning to divorce her?" "Eventually. But first, I want to make sure she understands the consequences of her choices." Carter studied me for a moment. "You seem like a nice guy, Mr. Fenwick. Nice guys don't usually ask for the kind of help you're looking for." "Maybe I'm not as nice as I look." "Maybe not." He opened a file folder and pulled out a contract. "My rate is $200 a day plus expenses. I'll need a $1,000 retainer." I wrote him a check. "How long will it take?" "Give me a week. I'll have everything you need by next Friday." That evening, Vanessa came home at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. She'd stopped at the grocery store and bought ingredients for my favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables, something she hadn't cooked in over 2 years. "How did the call go with Linda Sutter?" she asked as she prepared dinner. "Fine. She was upset, but she understood that I'd made a mistake." "And she's not going to pursue the divorce?" "I didn't ask. That's between her and Caleb." Vanessa nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She wanted reassurance that her world wasn't going to collapse, but she was too proud to ask for it directly. We ate dinner like a normal married couple, discussing our days and making plans for the weekend. It was almost like the old days, before the lies and the betrayal. But every time Vanessa smiled at me, I thought about her standing in our kitchen at 1:17 a.m., bragging about her affair and mocking our marriage. Some things couldn't be forgiven, some things shouldn't be. After dinner, I helped with the dishes while Vanessa took a shower. Her phone, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter, buzzed with a text message. The message was from C. Caleb, obviously. It read, "We need to talk. Tomorrow, usual place, 6 p.m. I memorized the message and left the phone where I'd found it. When Vanessa came downstairs, I was reading in the living room. "I might have to work late tomorrow," she said casually. "We're having some issues with the Morrison account." "The Morrison account?" "Our biggest client. There are some concerns about our performance metrics." Interesting. Morrison & Associates was having concerns about Caleb's performance. That could work to my advantage. Will you be working with Caleb on this? She hesitated. Probably. He's the account manager. I thought you said it was over between you two. It is. This is strictly business. I nodded and went back to my book. Be careful, Vanessa. Office politics can be dangerous. The next day, I positioned myself in the parking lot of the Marriott downtown at 5:45 p.m. Thomas Carter had lent me a camera with a telephoto lens, and I had a clear view of the hotel entrance from my position. At exactly 6 p.m., Caleb's BMW pulled into the parking lot. He got out, looked around nervously, and walked into the hotel. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later in her Honda. She parked 3 spaces away from Caleb's car and hurried inside. I took photos of both cars, both license plates, and both arrivals. Then I waited. They emerged 2 hours later, separately but within 5 minutes of each other. Caleb looked angry, gesturing wildly as he talked on his phone. Vanessa looked like she'd been crying. I followed Vanessa home, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She arrived at 8:30 p.m. and immediately went upstairs without speaking to me. I gave her 30 minutes, then knocked on our bedroom door. Vanessa, are you okay? I'm fine, she called through the door. Just tired. How did the Morrison meeting go? Silence. Then, it was difficult. We might lose the account. I'm sorry to hear that. Jack, can you sleep in the guest room tonight? I have a terrible headache. Of course. I spent the night in the guest room, but I didn't sleep much. Instead, I lay awake planning the next phase of my campaign. The following morning, Vanessa was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note saying she had an early meeting and wouldn't be home until late. I called Thomas Carter. I need you to accelerate your timeline, I told him. What's the rush? Things are moving faster than I expected. I need everything you can find by tomorrow. It'll cost extra. That's fine. I'll have something for you by noon tomorrow. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and pulled up the draft email to Morrison and Associates. I made a few minor edits, adding the detail about the hotel meetings and the impact on the Morrison account. Then I scheduled it to send at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. By the time Vanessa and Caleb arrived at work on Monday, their careers would be over. But that was just the beginning. I spent the rest of the day visiting 3 different banks, opening new accounts, and moving money around. I also met with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Mills, who specialized in complex marital asset cases. How long have you been planning this? She asked after I'd explained the situation. 3 months of evidence gathering, 1 week of active planning. You're very thorough. I used to fix computer networks for a living. I learned to think systematically about complex problems. She smiled. Your wife is going to be very surprised. That's the idea. When I got home that evening, Vanessa's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked the security cameras and saw that she hadn't been home all day. At 11 p.m., she finally appeared, looking exhausted and defeated. Long day? I asked. The longest. She collapsed onto the couch next to me. Jack, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. Caleb and I, we're not completely finished. There are some work issues we need to resolve before we can end things entirely. What kind of work issues? The Morrison account. If we lose it, the company will have to make layoffs. I could lose my job. I put my arm around her shoulders. We'll figure it out. Whatever happens, we'll get through it together. She leaned against me, and I could feel her trembling. I'm scared, Jack. I know. I don't want to lose everything. You won't, I said. I promise. It was the first honest thing I'd said to her in a week. She wasn't going to lose everything. She was going to lose much more than that. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made everything seem possible. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat in my workshop watching the sunrise while I waited for 9 a.m. At exactly 9, my scheduled email to Morrison and Associates would be delivered to their corporate compliance department. By 9:30, someone would be making phone calls. By 10 a.m., Caleb and Vanessa would be called into separate meetings with HR. By noon, they'd both be unemployed. I was working on a client's server upgrade when my phone rang at 10:47 a.m. Vanessa's number. Jack? Her voice was barely a whisper. What's wrong? I'm in my car outside the office. They just fired me. I made my voice sound shocked. What? Why? Someone reported my relationship with Caleb to corporate. They have photos, hotel records, everything. Who would do something like that? I don't know. She was crying now, ugly sobs that made her words hard to understand. They fired Caleb too. Security escorted us both out of the building. Come home. We'll figure this out. Jack, I'm so sorry. I know I promised it was over, but just come home, Vanessa. She arrived 20 minutes later, carrying a cardboard box with her personal belongings. Her face was red and puffy from crying, and she looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. They wouldn't even let me clean out my own desk, she said. Security packed everything while I watched. I took the box from her and set it on the kitchen table. What exactly did they tell you? That Morrison and Associates received an anonymous complaint about an undisclosed relationship between a supervisor and subordinate. They said they had documentation going back 3 months. What kind of documentation? Photos of us at restaurants, hotel receipts, phone records. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. Jack, how could someone have all of that information? I have no idea. She started pacing around the kitchen, her hands shaking. This is a disaster. I'll never get another job in marketing. Word travels fast in this industry. Maybe you could freelance for a while, build up your reputation again. With what money? They terminated me for cause, Jack. No severance, no unemployment benefits, nothing. I nodded sympathetically while calculating our financial situation in my head. With Vanessa unemployed and Caleb facing his own financial ruin, the power dynamic had shifted dramatically in my favor. We'll manage, I said. I make enough to cover our basic expenses. Basic expenses? She stopped pacing and stared at me. Jack, we have a mortgage, car payments, credit cards. My salary was paying for half of everything. Then we'll have to make some adjustments. What kind of adjustments? We might need to sell the house, downsize, live within our means for a while. The look of horror on her face was almost comical. Vanessa had spent 15 years climbing the social ladder, and the thought of sliding back down was more terrifying to her than losing our marriage. There has to be another way, she said. Like what? I could fight the termination, sue them for wrongful dismissal. Based on what? You were having an affair with your supervisor. They had every right to fire you. But someone was spying on me, Jack. Taking photos, following me around. That has to be illegal. Maybe, but proving it would be expensive, and you'd have to admit to the affair in court. She slumped into a chair at the kitchen table. I can't believe this is happening. My phone rang. Thomas Carter. Excuse me, I told Vanessa. I need to take this call. I walked into my workshop and closed the door. You've been busy, Carter said without preamble. What do you mean? I spent the weekend following your wife and her boyfriend. This morning they both got fired. That's quite a coincidence. Is it? He chuckled. I've been doing this for 40 years, son. I know revenge when I see it. Do you have the information I requested? I do, and it's more interesting than you might expect. How so? Your wife's affair isn't her first. I found evidence of at least 2 other relationships over the past 5 years. She's been very careful, but not careful enough. That hit me like a physical blow. 2 other affairs, 5 years of betrayal. Are you sure? Positive. I have photos, credit card records, and witness statements. She's been cheating on you for a long time, Mr. Fenwick. I sat down heavily in my desk chair. Who were the others? A client from her previous job and a guy she met at a conference in Boston. Both married men, both ended when their wives found out. Their wives found out? Anonymous tips, both times. Someone's been watching your wife for years. Who? That's the million-dollar question. Someone with resources and patience, someone who wanted to document everything but never acted on the information. Until now. Until now. After I hung up with Carter, I sat in my workshop for a long time, processing this new information. 5 years of affairs, 5 years of lies. And someone else had been watching, documenting, waiting. But who? I walked back into the kitchen where Vanessa was making phone calls, trying to do damage control with her professional contacts. Any luck? I asked. She shook her head. Word's already spread. 3 people have already heard about what happened. I'm sorry. She looked at me with something approaching suspicion. You're taking this very well. What do you mean? Your wife just got fired for having an affair, and you're acting like it's a minor inconvenience. Would you prefer that I yell at you? Throw things? Demand a divorce? I don't know. Maybe. This calm acceptance is almost worse than anger would be. She was right, of course. The old Jack would have been devastated. He would have been crying, begging for explanations, demanding to know how she could do this to their marriage. But the old Jack was gone. I'm trying to be supportive, I said. We need to focus on solutions, not blame. Solutions like selling our house and moving into an apartment, if necessary. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. It's my mother. You should answer it. She did, and I could hear Margaret Whitman's voice from across the kitchen, shrill and accusatory. Vanessa Marie, what is this nonsense I'm hearing about you losing your job? Mother, I can explain. Your father is beside himself. Do you have any idea how this reflects on our family? The conversation continued for 10 minutes, with Margaret alternately lecturing Vanessa about responsibility and demanding to know how she planned to fix the situation. When Vanessa finally hung up, she looked broken. They're cutting off my credit cards, she said. The ones they co-signed. They don't want to be associated with this scandal. That's probably for the best. We need to reduce our expenses anyway. Jack, you don't understand. Without those cards, I can't even buy groceries. I have credit cards. With limits. We're going to max them out in the first month. I walked over to the kitchen counter and pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning. It contained a detailed budget showing our income and expenses without Vanessa's salary. I've run the numbers, I said, handing her the folder. We can survive for about 6 months if we're careful. She studied the budget, her face growing paler with each page. This is impossible, she said finally. You have us spending $25 a week on groceries. It's doable if we shop smart and cook at home. And $50 a month for entertainment? We'll have to find cheaper ways to have fun. Jack, this isn't living. This is surviving. Sometimes survival is the best you can hope for. She threw the folder across the kitchen, scattering papers everywhere. I won't live like this, she said. I won't go backward. Then find another job. It's not that simple. My reputation is ruined. No one in this industry will hire me. Then find work in another industry. Doing what? I'm a marketing executive, not a waitress. Maybe it's time to learn some humility. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, and Vanessa recoiled as if I'd slapped her. Humility? You've spent 15 years living beyond our means, climbing social ladders and looking down on people you considered beneath you. Maybe this is an opportunity to remember what really matters. What really matters? Jack, we're talking about losing everything we've worked for. No, we're talking about losing everything you worked for. I never cared about the big house or the expensive dinners or impressing your parents. Then why did you go along with it? Because I loved you. Because I thought making you happy would make me happy. And now? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shared my bed for 15 years while betraying me with other men. Now I think happiness is something you have to earn. That evening, Vanessa locked herself in our bedroom and made phone calls to everyone she knew, looking for job leads or character references. I could hear her voice through the door, alternately pleading and demanding as she tried to rebuild her professional network. I spent the evening in my workshop, reading Thomas Carter's full report on Vanessa's affairs. The details were worse than I'd imagined. Not just the physical betrayals, but the emotional ones. Love letters to her previous lovers. Plans to leave me for the client from her old job. Detailed complaints about our marriage, our home, our life together. I'd been married to a stranger for 5 years, maybe longer. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Pete. How are you holding up? He asked. Better than expected. I heard about Vanessa losing her job. Word travels fast. She's not taking it well. I bet. What's your next move? I'm not sure yet. I'm still processing some new information. Anything I should know about? I told him about Carter's investigation and the evidence of previous affairs. Pete was quiet for a long moment. Jack, I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy. The strange thing is, I'm not as hurt as I thought I'd be. I'm angry, but not hurt. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. You can't hurt someone who's already checked out emotionally. Is that what I've done? Sounds like it. Question is, what are you going to do now? I'm going to finish what I started. Which is? Making sure Vanessa understands the full cost of her choices. Be careful, Jack. Revenge is a dangerous game. So is marriage, apparently. After I hung up with Pete, I sat in my workshop until well past midnight, planning the next phase of my campaign. Vanessa had lost her job, but that was just the beginning. She still had her friends, her social standing, and her sense of superiority. All of that was about to change. I opened my laptop and began typing the first of several emails I'd be sending over the next few days. This one was addressed to the members of Vanessa's book club, a group of wealthy women who met monthly to gossip and drink wine while pretending to discuss literature. The subject line read, "The Truth About Vanessa Fenwick." Tuesday morning brought rain and the kind of gray skies that matched my mood perfectly. Vanessa had spent the night in the guest room, claiming she needed space to think about her situation. I suspected she was actually making more phone calls, trying to find someone willing to hire a disgraced marketing executive. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she appeared, dressed in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt. It was the most casual I'd seen her dress in years, and it made her look younger, but also more vulnerable. Any luck with the job search? I asked. Not yet, but I have a few promising leads. It was a lie, and we both knew it. I'd been monitoring our home phone and internet usage, and she'd made exactly 0 calls to potential employers. What kind of leads? A startup company in Portland. They're looking for someone with my experience. That's great. When's the interview? They're still reviewing applications. Another lie. I nodded and handed her a cup of coffee. Jack, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about humility and earning happiness. And? You're right, I've been focused on the wrong things. Material success, social status, impressing people who don't really matter. I waited for the but that I knew was coming. But I don't think the answer is to give up everything we've worked for. We just need to be smarter about how we rebuild. What did you have in mind? I could start my own consulting business, work from home, build up a client base gradually. With what startup capital? We could take out a home equity loan. I nearly laughed. She'd lost her job for having an affair, destroyed her professional reputation, and alienated her parents, but she still thought she could borrow her way back to prosperity. Vanessa, no bank is going to give us a loan when you're unemployed. You have good credit. You could apply. To fund your business venture? To fund our future. I set down my coffee cup and looked at her. Our future? Yes. Jack, I know I made mistakes, but we can get through this. We can rebuild our marriage and our lives. Can we? If we work together. If we trust each other. Trust. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. Vanessa, how many affairs have you had? The question caught her off guard. She blinked several times, and I could see her calculating how to respond. What do you mean? It's a simple question. How many men have you been involved with during our marriage? Jack, why are you asking me this? Because I deserve to know the truth. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain. Caleb was a mistake, a terrible mistake that I'll regret for the rest of my life. That's not what I asked. It's the only answer that matters. Is it? She turned back to face me. Jack, what's the point of digging up the past? We need to focus on moving forward. The point is that I can't move forward with someone I don't trust. You can trust me now. I've learned my lesson. Have you? Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. Vanessa looked at me with a puzzled expression. Are you expecting someone? No. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. A woman in her 50s stood on our porch, holding an umbrella and looking uncomfortable. I opened the door. Can I help you? Mr. Fenwick? My name is Linda Sutter. I think we need to talk. I invited her in, and she shook the rain off her umbrella before following me into the living room. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, and I watched her face go pale when she saw our visitor. Mrs. Sutter, Vanessa said carefully, what are you doing here? I came to talk to your husband about our mutual problem. What problem? Vanessa asked. Linda Sutter looked at her with undisguised contempt. The problem of being married to cheating liars. I gestured for everyone to sit down. What can we do for you, Mrs. Sutter? I wanted to thank you for the information you provided about my husband's affair. It's been very helpful in my divorce proceedings. Vanessa looked back and forth between us. What information? Your husband contacted me last week to let me know about Caleb's relationship with you. Jack? Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. I met her eyes calmly. You said Caleb was a real man who took care of your needs. I thought his wife should know what kind of man she was married to. You told her about us? I told her the truth. Linda Sutter smiled grimly. And I'm very grateful. Thanks to Mr. Fenwick, I was able to document Caleb's assets before he had a chance to hide them. Hide them? Vanessa asked. Men like my husband always try to move money around when they know divorce is coming, but I froze our accounts first. Vanessa looked at me with a mixture of shock and betrayal. Jack, how could you do this? How could I tell the truth about your affair? Pretty easily, actually. But you said you'd call her and explain that you made a mistake. I lied. The simple admission seemed to hit her like a physical blow. She sank back into her chair, staring at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Linda Sutter stood up. I should go. I just wanted to let you know that Caleb has been served with divorce papers. He'll be moving out of our house this weekend. Where will he go? Vanessa asked. That's not my problem anymore. After Linda left, Vanessa and I sat in silence for several minutes. The rain continued to fall outside, and I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. You've been planning this, Vanessa said finally. Planning what? This whole thing. The emails to my parents, the report to Morrison and Associates, the meeting with Caleb's wife. You orchestrated all of it. I responded to your choices. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure there were consequences. She stood up abruptly. I'm going to my sister's. That's probably a good idea. This isn't over, Jack. Yes, it is. She packed a suitcase and left without another word. I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded her car and drove away in the rain. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. I spent the afternoon working on client projects, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while my marriage collapsed around me. At 4 p.m., my phone started ringing. The first call was from Margaret Whitman, Vanessa's mother. Jack, what is this nonsense about you contacting Caleb's wife? It's not nonsense, Margaret. It's the truth. Vanessa says you've been plotting against her. Vanessa says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. How dare you speak about my daughter that way? Your daughter has been having affairs for 5 years, Margaret. She's been lying to me, to you, and to everyone else who trusted her. The line went quiet for a moment. 5 years? At least, I have documentation if you'd like to see it. I don't understand. Your daughter is not the person you think she is. The second call came from Erica, Vanessa's former best friend. Jack, I just heard about what happened with Linda Sutter. What about it? Vanessa thinks you're trying to ruin her life. I'm trying to make sure she faces the consequences of her actions. But calling Caleb's wife? That seems vindictive. Does it? How would you feel if your husband was having an affair and someone knew about it but didn't tell you? Erica was quiet for a moment. I'd want to know. So did Linda. The third call was from Sam at O'Malley's pub. Jack, you need to get down here. Why? Your wife is here, and she's making a scene. I drove to the pub through the rain, wondering what new drama Vanessa had created. I found her at the bar, 3 drinks ahead of sobriety, telling anyone who would listen about her cheating husband who had destroyed her career. There he is, she said loudly when she saw me, my loving husband who stabbed me in the back. The bar went quiet. About 20 people were staring at us, including several I recognized from around town. Vanessa, let's go home. Home? What home? You mean the house you're going to sell out from under me? You're drunk. We can talk about this tomorrow. I'm not drunk. I'm enlightened. I finally see who you really are, Jack Fenwick. She stood up unsteadily and pointed at me. This man, she announced to the bar, pretended to forgive me for one mistake, then spent weeks plotting his revenge. One mistake? I asked. One affair. One moment of weakness. What about the client from your old job? The bar went even quieter. Vanessa's face went pale. What about him? The affair you had 3 years ago. Was that one mistake too? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Thomas Carter had provided. Should I show everyone the hotel receipts? The love letters you wrote him? Jack, don't. What about the conference in Boston 2 years ago? Was that another mistake? She grabbed my arm. Please, don't do this here. Why not? You wanted to make a public scene. Let's make sure everyone gets the whole story. Sam appeared beside us. Maybe you folks should take this outside. Good idea, I said. I looked around the bar at the faces staring at us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about my wife, Vanessa Fenwick. She's been cheating on me for 5 years with at least 3 different men. She lost her job last week for having an affair with her boss, and now she wants you to feel sorry for her because I told the truth about what she's been doing. The silence in the bar was complete. Vanessa looked around at the faces staring at her, and I could see the exact moment when she realized that her reputation in this town was finished. She ran for the door, leaving her purse on the bar. I picked up her purse and followed her outside, where I found her sitting in her car, crying. Get in, she said when she saw me. You're too drunk to drive. Get in the car, Jack. I got in the passenger seat. She started the engine but didn't put it in gear. You really hate me, don't you? She said. No, I hate what you've done. I hate the lies and the betrayal and the years of making me feel like I wasn't good enough. I never said you weren't good enough. You didn't have to say it. You showed me every time you went to bed with another man. She leaned her head against the steering wheel. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. It could, if you wanted it to. I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and felt nothing but pity. It's too late, Vanessa. Way too late. She drove us home in silence. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and threatening. When we pulled into our driveway, she turned off the engine but didn't get out of the car. What happens now? She asked. Now you deal with the consequences of your choices. And us? There is no us anymore. She nodded slowly. I suppose I deserve that. You deserve worse than that. Maybe, but you're not going to give it to me, are you? I looked at her one last time. No, I'm going to let you give it to yourself. I got out of the car and walked into the house, leaving her sitting in the driveway in the gathering darkness. The war was almost over, but I had one final battle left to fight. The next morning, I woke to an empty house and the sound of my phone buzzing with text messages. Vanessa's car was gone from the driveway, and I assumed she'd returned to her sister's place across town. The messages were all variations of the same theme, people I hadn't heard from in months, suddenly very interested in my marital problems. Word of last night's scene at O'Malley's had spread through town like wildfire, and everyone wanted to know the details. I deleted the messages without responding and made coffee. I had work to do. At 9 a.m., I called Patricia Mills, the divorce attorney. I'm ready to file, I told her. What changed? My wife made a public scene last night. There's no possibility of reconciliation now. Good. I'll have the papers ready by this afternoon. I want everything, Patricia. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts. Everything. Based on the evidence you've provided, that shouldn't be a problem. Adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state. What about spousal support? Given her employment status and the circumstances of her termination, I doubt any judge would award her significant support. After I hung up with Patricia, I drove to Thomas Carter's office to pick up the complete file on Vanessa's affairs. The folder was thick, filled with photos, documents, and witness statements that painted a picture of systematic deception going back years. This is impressive work, I told him. Your wife was sloppy. She never thought anyone was watching. Someone else was watching, though. You mentioned anonymous tips to the other wives. Carter nodded. I did some digging on that. The tips came from different email addresses, but they all traced back to the same IP address. Whose? That's where it gets interesting. The IP address belongs to a computer at Vanessa's first job, the marketing firm where she had the affair with the client. I stared at him. Someone at her old job has been tracking her affairs? More than that. Someone's been documenting them, photographing them, and exposing them when the time was right. Who? I have a theory, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Carter opened another file and pulled out a photograph. It showed Vanessa leaving a restaurant with a man I didn't recognize. This is David Morrison, the client she had an affair with 3 years ago. Okay. Morrison's wife found out about the affair and divorced him. But here's the interesting part. She didn't just divorce him, she destroyed him. Took his business, his house, his reputation. He lost everything. What does that have to do with Vanessa? Morrison blamed Vanessa for ruining his life. He became obsessed with her, started following her, documenting her activities. I felt a chill run down my spine. He's been stalking her? For 3 years. Every affair, every lie, every betrayal. He's been watching and waiting. Waiting for what? For someone like you. Someone who could do what he couldn't. Destroy her completely. I stared at the photograph, trying to process this information. You think he's been feeding me information? I think he's been creating opportunities for you to discover information. The anonymous emails to the other wives, that was him setting precedents, showing you what was possible. But I figured out Vanessa's affair on my own. Did you? Or did you figure it out because Morrison made sure you'd figure it out? I thought back to the past few months, trying to remember how I'd first become suspicious. It had started with a phone call, Vanessa talking to someone in the kitchen, using a tone of voice I'd never heard before. But how had I happened to overhear that call? I'd come home early from a client meeting that had been canceled at the last minute. The canceled meeting, I said. What? 3 months ago, I had a client meeting that was canceled at the last minute. That's when I first overheard Vanessa talking to Caleb on the phone. Carter nodded. I'd be willing to bet that meeting was canceled by someone other than your client. The implications hit me like a truck. Morrison hadn't just been watching Vanessa. He'd been manipulating me, guiding me toward the discovery of her affairs, helping me plan my revenge. Where is Morrison now? I asked. That's the million-dollar question. He disappeared about a week ago, right after Vanessa and Caleb were fired. I left Carter's office with my head spinning. Everything I'd done over the past few months, the evidence gathering, the strategic revelations, the systematic destruction of Vanessa's life, had been orchestrated by a man I'd never met, who was using me to exact his own revenge. But as I drove home, I realized something important. It didn't matter. Morrison might have created the opportunities, but I'd made the choices. He might have shown me the evidence, but I'd decided what to do with it. Vanessa had still cheated, still lied, still betrayed our marriage vows. The revenge was mine, even if the plan had been his. I was sitting in my workshop, processing this revelation, when Vanessa's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, like an old woman, and walked to the front door. I met her in the kitchen. She looked terrible, pale, exhausted, and defeated. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "I've been thinking about everything that's happened. The affairs, the lies, the way I've treated you. And I want to make it right." I almost laughed. "How do you propose to do that?" "I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is a divorce." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Jack, please, we can fix this." "No, we can't." "Why not?" "Because you've been cheating on me for 5 years, Vanessa. Because you've lied to me, manipulated me, and made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting what you were doing." "I know, but because even now, even after losing your job and your reputation and your friends, you still don't understand what you've done wrong." "I do understand." "Do you? Then tell me, what did you do wrong?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I had affairs." "What else?" "I lied to you." "What else?" I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to say that you destroyed our marriage, that you took 15 years of love and trust and threw it away for a few hours of excitement with men who didn't care about you." Tears started running down her face. "I did. I destroyed everything." "And why did you do it?" "Because I was selfish, because I was bored, because I wanted to feel special." "And how did that work out for you?" She sobbed openly now. "It didn't. I lost everything." I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a manila envelope Patricia Mills had delivered that afternoon. "Yes, you did." I handed her the envelope. She opened it with shaking hands and pulled out the divorce papers. "Jack, no. It's over, Vanessa." She read through the papers, her face growing paler with each page. "You're asking for everything." "I'm taking everything." "The house?" "Mine." "The cars?" "Mine." "My retirement account?" "Ours. Which means half of it is mine." She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore. Jack, please, I'll sign the papers, but give me something. Enough to get back on my feet." "Like you gave me? 15 years of faithfulness while you were running around with other men?" "I'll pay you back. When I get another job, I'll pay you back everything." "With what job? Your reputation in this industry is finished. Everyone knows what you did." "Then I'll do something else." "Like what? You've never done anything but marketing, and you've never been good at anything that requires honesty or integrity." The words were cruel, but they were also true. Vanessa had spent her entire adult life climbing social and professional ladders, stepping on anyone who got in her way. "I'll figure something out," she said quietly. "I'm sure you will." She folded the divorce papers and put them back in the envelope. "How long do I have?" "To respond to the papers? 30 days? "To move out?" "You already moved out. You're staying at your sister's, remember? My clothes, my personal things, are in boxes in the garage. You can pick them up any time." She stared at me for a long moment. "You really hate me." "No, I told you before. I hate what you did, but I don't hate you." "Then why are you being so cruel?" "Because cruelty is the only language you understand. For 15 years I tried kindness, patience, understanding. You responded by cheating on me. So this is punishment? This is justice." She nodded slowly and walked toward the door. "I'll sign the papers." "Good." She paused with her hand on the doorknob. "Jack?" "What?" "I did love you. Maybe not the way I should have, but I did love you." "I know." "Do you still love me?" I looked at her, this woman who had been my wife, my partner, my best friend for 15 years, the woman who had betrayed me repeatedly and systematically, who had lied to my face and made me doubt my own sanity. "I love the woman I thought you were," I said, "but that woman never existed." She left without another word. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after she was gone, listening to the silence of the empty house. Then I walked to my workshop and opened my laptop. I had one final email to send. "Mr. Morrison," I wrote, "I know what you did. I know you've been watching my wife for 3 years, documenting her affairs, and manipulating me into discovering them. I know you used me to get your revenge on the woman who helped destroy your marriage. I want you to know that I don't care. Vanessa got what she deserved, and so did I. I got my freedom, and you got your revenge. We're even. But if you ever contact me or my ex-wife again, I'll have you arrested for stalking. Stay away from both of us. Jack Fenwick." I sent the email to the address Thomas Carter had provided, then closed the laptop and walked outside. The sun was setting over the town where I'd lived for 15 years, married to a woman who had never really been my wife. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding my life, selling the house, dividing the assets, starting over. But tonight, I stood in my driveway and watched the sun go down, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The war was over. I had won. And Vanessa Fenwick, the woman who had once bragged about her affair and mocked our marriage, would spend the rest of her life learning what it meant to face the consequences of her choices. I smiled and walked back into the house, closing the door on 15 years of lies and betrayal. It was time to begin again.